Angela Harrington Rice is the Executive Director of Interfaith Community Initiatives. She worked for 35 years with Atlanta Interfaith Broadcasters, and she holds a Bachelor of Arts in Mass Communications and Media Studies from Clark College. Angela Rice, thank you so much for speaking with us today.
Oh, I'm happy to be here. Look forward to it.
Not too long ago, we were in Atlanta for Interfaith Atlanta and got to meet so many great folks. And some of the folks that we talked to at their booths were part of one of your initiatives. And that got us really interested in speaking with you. Mm-hmm. And before I talk about ICI, Interfaith Community Initiatives, let me just ask, what's your spiritual background? What did you grow up in?
Yeah. I grew up in a rural community, and I attended church and joined the church where my ancestors actually formed and built. And so I grew up in the Baptist church. So I was in a Baptist church for most of my years. I am now in an independent unity church, which is a lot more embracing of different paths to God than was the tradition I came from. But I love my Baptist church. I'm still a quasi member, and I was a church girl. I tell people I love church. I love Jesus, and I was at church every time it opened. I contributed in so many different ways by being in different committees and teaching Sunday school and doing things like that. So I still connect with my church because it's my family's church. And but today I am a assistant minister at Hillside International Truth Center, where I have been for probably nearly 25 years.
Definitely. Sounds like your church home.
Yes.
Well, talk to me about Interfaith Community Initiatives. And when did you first become aware of an interfaith community and that there was work to be done?
Well, because Atlanta, the television network that I worked in was Atlanta Interfaith Broadcasters. So one of our main objectives was to make sure that media was accessible to all faith groups. And so one of the things that we did, we partnered with people in the community who were doing interfaith work. So there were always people coming through the door, from every different faith. And when the interfaith movement first got really started in the Atlanta area, they created something called Common Threads. And so what we did, we offered them the opportunity to come into the studio and to actually interview each other about what those common threads were. So there would be a Jewish person that interviewed a Muslim person who interviewed a Sikh who interviewed a Hindu, or back and forth that way. And so we continued to be engaged with the interfaith community. And one of my primary positions was to make sure that there was a place for people of different faiths at Atlanta Interfaith Broadcasters. So Interfaith Community Initiatives started right after 9/11. But the interfaith movement had already started. There was an organization called Faith Alliance of Metropolitan Atlanta, which is now Interfaith Atlanta. And so when ICI started, AIB was a place that they could go to talk about what it is that they were doing, how they were bringing people together, their travels. And so we were offered an opportunity to actually travel with this group. And I was a person who traveled with them to Turkey. And that was in 2006, I believe. And so I traveled to Turkey with them, got to know, the people who were in leadership on these travel opportunities. We call them pilgrimages because we believe it's a spiritual process, because you're getting to know more about yourself and your relationship with the divine, as well as getting to know other people who are traveling. So in 2006, we go to Turkey. I think it may have been about 26 of us on the trip, and the leadership, it was a Buddhist, not a Buddhist, a Muslim, Christian, and Jewish person. And so they kind of lead the discussions about those different faith traditions. And so it was a glorious trip. Now I'm going as work, so I'm carrying all this equipment all the time and trying to shoot everything and get interviews, and trying to make it to the bus on time with all of this equipment. So they were very wonderful in terms of helping me to, load up what I needed to load up so I could take this back to the Atlanta Interfaith Broadcasters and develop a program. In fact, I developed a 2-part documentary that actually won a Southeastern Emmy Award. So that was a real thrill. And I think because I did that work and kind of understood what the organization was about and how they were operating, they started to grow and develop more programs. And I was invited to be on the board of directors. And so I was on the board of directors a number of years before I became the executive director. And I always tell people I'm probably one of the early interfaith activists in Atlanta, because I worked in interfaith all of my career.
Interesting. Anyone who's even gone on a family vacation knows that travel brings out the best and sometimes the worst in all of us, because something will always go wrong, or we're getting to know people, or we're just forced to be together longer than we typically would. Mm-hmm. So my understanding is on these trips, people were assigned roommates of a different faith.
Yes.
And talk to me about why and how that worked.
Because, the trips, the pilgrimages are not about the place we go. I mean, people think that's what attracts people. Ooh, it'll be nice to go to Turkey. That attracts them. The other reason why we travel internationally or nationally is because we want people to be outside of their normal environment. We don't want people who are going to be on the phone. We don't want people who are going to continue to do work we want people to give their full attention to this process and to the persons that are on this pilgrimage with them. So there are 3 things that we do. One is they're the assigned roommates. So generally when we travel internationally, it's usually 10 to 12 days. So so you'll have a Jewish roommate, a Christian roommate, a Buddhist roommate if it's a Buddhist, if we're going to a country that's primarily Buddhist. And so we'll have all of those switch up and get to know each other. So the idea is that we're going to get to know each other. So when we're back in Atlanta, we have these connections. We know each other. We understand faith through the eyes of that person instead of someone else telling us what they think this person believes or what this denomination or religion professes. We get to know it intimately through someone who is really connected to their tradition. We're not an organization that picks up seekers. We're not looking for seekers. We're looking for people who are very well defined in their spiritual tradition. So we're not about proselytizing or getting anyone to change how they see. We just want to share. The other thing is every day you have to be with another person on the pilgrimage. So that way, there may be conversations between men and women when the roommates are always of the same gender. So, and then the other thing is that we have discussions. We come together and we call it our round table, where we talk about what did we go through, what did we see, what was the interactions, what questions do we have. The interesting thing is I have been on several of the pilgrimages, And we have had some challenges. We've had people get hurt, fall. We had to go to the hospital with them. We've had people lose their purses and, have the whole hotel looking for
Yes.
purse.
Oh, boy.
We've had conversations that got kind of tense. But one of the things that we have not had is no major fallout. We do have some rules about how we handle these things. If someone is having a challenge, then they go to the religious leader who is helping to conduct the pilgrimage, and then they talk. I know once I wasn't working on this one. I went as just a fellow pilgrim, and I was asked to preach. And so I preached from a scripture that I didn't know had been considered very harmful to Jews. And in this sermon, I talked about how Jesus overcame boundaries. He moved beyond boundaries. Things that mostly in that tradition Jews weren't to do. But Jesus did them because he wanted to embrace people from different traditions. I didn't see it as a proselytizing sermon, but so what happened is that person spoke to the Jewish leader, and the Jewish leader talked to me. We had a conversation, and he understood my point of view after that conversation, but it never blew up. But there are challenges, and there's a lot of things that we don't know about each other because we're so divided, and this gives people of different faiths, different backgrounds. One of the things, we have to have so many of each faith group that's coming. And then we have to have so many African Americans or blacks. We have to have so many women and so many men. So, it's a lot of work trying to create that dynamic.
Boy, but yes, an opportunity to really learn from each other. And as you said, something you learned about something that you hadn't had any ill intention, but could have been misunderstood.
Yes.
Some of the places you've been, South Africa, Vietnam, the country of Jordan, what would make you pick those particular places?
Well, one of the things that happens is ICI has a board of directors, and so they actually present ideas of where it is that we would like to go. In terms of Jordan, the history, it's like all of the monotheistic religions are kind of bedded there. I think that was one of the reasons. That was early on in ICI's history. And the travel portion of ICI is called World Pilgrims. So that was early in the history. The South Africa was about reconciliation. How do people, after they've gone through this really challenging history, how do they then come together to move forward, to move their country forward? And so that gave us a good opportunity to look at and to speak with people who were part of that movement. It was a glorious trip. Really a glorious trip.
Boy, that whole truth and reconciliation process, that's something that has rarely happened after conflict.
Yes.
And what a lesson. You have... Oh, go ahead.
And then I just wanted to say Vietnam was because of what the Vietnamese call it, their American War. So we wanted to see what Vietnam was like after all of that and how receptive they were to receive people from the United States. And we can tell you that the country seems to be very healed and moving on. And it was really a great experience. We had with us a Vietnam vet. And so for him, it was, reconnecting with that history, and to heal the wounds, because a lot of our Vietnam vets came back with those wounds and seeing things that, that you think about them like 18, 19 years old and seeing these atrocities and being engaged in these atrocities in the name of patriotism in your country. And so he wanted to go back and heal wounds. And we had a Buddhist leader for the first time, and Vietnam is a very Buddhist country, although they don't consider it a country religion, but it's a lot of Buddhism there. And so it was a really wonderful opportunity to reconnect and then even think about our own healings.
Yeah. Well, how would you say your spiritual life has been influenced by traveling this way with different people, different faiths, and learning from each other?
Well, one of the things is I love people. I don't have any brand of people that I consider, unlovable. So I love people. I love having these conversations. And, I've learned so much because now, remember, I grew up in a rural community. I grew up in a rural community in Georgia in a Baptist church. And so I didn't have much of an understanding of different religions. I understood, part of the Bible was the Hebrew Bible. I understood that. But, when you live in small towns, you're kind of cloistered. And so it was wonderful to get to know other people, but also to learn. Like, I didn't know that Muslims believed that Jesus was a prophet and Mary and Moses and everybody else is in the Quran. I didn't know that, So, it was things that I learned. And it actually inspired me to actually go to seminary. So that was one of the things, learning more about the Jewish tradition and learning more, knowing that Jesus was a Jew and understanding the Bible in a way from that Jewish tradition and listening to people talk about some of the rituals and some of the celebrations. And so it helped me understand my faith even more,
Yeah. And I'm wondering, you mentioned that people really do get to know each other. Then they come back. Mm-hmm. Then they're still rubbing shoulders in the community. So not only would it help the people who go, but I'm curious what you've seen. Because the leaders know each other, what has that done for the community at large?
Well, I think one of the things that's happened in our community is because we had a head start on a lot of things, that we were able to connect during some of the devastations that we've gone through, like, COVID, checking on each other. We had an opportunity once, I think it was a masjid that was being threatened by some people who I guess didn't like Muslim. I can't remember. It was a Christian.
And masjid, so a mosque.
Oh, yeah. A masjid is generally more of an American term. Mosque, I think, is more of it's just the same. They're the same thing. A masjid and a mosque. But you generally hear mosque more outside of the U.S. and masjid more inside of the U.S. So, but there was a masjid or mosque that was being threatened, and the interfaith community came, and Jews, Christians came and surrounded it. Like, we're standing with you. We've stood with each other during funerals, during weddings. We have celebrated Shabbat. So one of the other things is that wherever we go to a religious service of the people who are traveling as pilgrims. So in Turkey, we went to several mosques. And we also found a Jewish synagogue in Turkey. We met with the head rabbi in Turkey. We went to an Eastern Orthodox church. And so we worship with them. So we get to be in the midst of how they worship. And I think that just connects us because we have so much to share when we get back. The other thing that we do is when we come back, we usually get together, share our experiences, share our pictures and all of the things that happened and what we learned. So I think Atlanta is a better city. Because of, I see us in a way carrying on the work of Dr. King. He's our number one citizen, and the King Center is a favorite tourist location here in Atlanta area. But we believe that we're carrying on this work because it was about us coming together as one, recognizing the humanity in each other. And so I think that what we continue. And then to know each other, to go somewhere and people from different traditions. It really feels good.
ICI, or the Interfaith Community Initiative, has several programs. You've been talking about World Pilgrims. Mm-hmm. Also, there's immersions, there's sacred spaces. And you tell me the website because people might want to look this up and learn.
It is interfaithci.org. Interfaith.
Very nice.
ci.org. Our program, Interfaith Immersions, that's a wonderful program. And it's like, okay, maybe you can't go outside of the country. Maybe that's not something you can do because of economics, because of family, because of work. So we do the same thing in Atlanta. So we get everybody together, usually on a bus, and we take them around to the various religious centers in Atlanta. We have people from those centers, churches, synagogues, mosques, temples, and they tell those who are traveling with us, what they believe. They give us a tour of the building. Sometimes they feed us. So, I think it may have been 2019, we actually took police officers, firemen, and other public safety officers into these various religious worship centers. And so that they got to know people who worship there. They got to know the leaders. They were given a tour of the building. And the interesting thing, they had an incident in Atlanta where the police officers went to a masjid to arrest someone, and it was on a Friday. And so
the day of prayers there.
Yeah, but they don't know that. They don't know it's a day of prayer. They don't know that they don't sit in chairs. They don't know that they're generally on the floor. They don't know that, we're wearing your boots and shoes inside the building. So they disturbed this religious service. And so that became an idea of why it was necessary for the people who are supposed to protect us to know us, to know people from different traditions. So they got an opportunity to understand why they take off their shoes in certain places like Hindu temples, Buddhist temples, and, the Muslim masjids. And then we took them to synagogue. A lot of them had never been inside a synagogue. And they learned what was important. One of the questions one of the firemen asked was, if this holy place was on fire, what should we do? What should we save after we save the people? And they said to save the Torah. Yeah, and then they showed him how to handle the Torah, because the Torah has to be handled in a certain way. And so I thought that was such important information. The Torah is a holy book that they read. They're very expensive. The congregations come together to bring forth the best one that they know. And so to have that information for people who are protecting us and protecting our properties or whatever, I thought was important work. Sacred spaces is I shoot out an email and say, meet me at this place on this day. And we worship with them. We don't have any agenda, just to go and worship with them and enjoy their service. And sometimes after that, we go out and have a bite to eat and talk about what we saw and what we enjoyed about the experience.
Boy, what a beautiful tradition. Yeah, to worship with each other, not just to intellectually hear the stories, but to actually participate to whatever degree is appropriate in the building and with the people whose place it is, to know that you're there out of respect.
Yes,
and solidarity with them. Atlanta, as you said, has been known as an important place in American civil rights. And so this seems to be, in a lot of ways, a continuation of that mission.
I think so. I really do. I really do, because if we don't get to know each other, and if we don't interact with each other, I don't know. I can tell you that I was very I get very disappointed when I see the division that we're having in this country. And that when we're not willing to listen to each other, when we're not willing to respect the tradition of someone else, when we have our own judgment about someone else's faith tradition. I believe that this country says that, liberty for all, and that we have religious freedom. And so I think that should be respected always. I may have one way of doing things. You may have another way of doing things. And I think that's okay. And I had someone tell me recently that I really love. She says, for so long we have been celebrating the similarities. She said, I think it's time for us to celebrate the differences too. And I thought that was so powerful. Let's celebrate the differences. Let's not try to make everybody in our image or try to bring us all to this place. Let us show what's different about our traditions.
Yep.
And I think that helps us also to get to know each other better. And when we can respect that difference, I think that's when we're moving ahead.
Amen.
Yes.
So what you mentioned being a church girl, which is a term, that's a term people use, and you call it up. You can picture how you're dressed. You can picture what the activities you're part of and everything. In those decades since then, as a believer, as a seminarian, as someone who deals with people of different faiths and is hoping for respect, and whatever other life experiences, what has God taught you that you didn't know then that you know now about the divine or about anything?
Oh, wow. Well, one of the things that it has taught me that we are more alike than we are different. As we continue to travel this journey, over those years, I've lost so many loved ones. We all go through grief. We all go through pain and suffering. And one of the things that I learned is that maybe the way I do it might not be the best way. It's like I really celebrate the Jewish tradition of Sit and Shiva. I really respect the Muslim way of a very clean burial, and I guess that's also in the Jewish tradition, where it's not the big casket and all the things, whatever. I mean, I have glorified in those traditions. And so I have found them somewhat to be much more healing in ways than my Christian path. So I think we can learn so much from each other. And as I said, if we can respect those differences may shine a light on maybe a better way for us to do some things. Yeah.
Oh, that's beautifully said. And I'm wondering, again, a personal question, what in your life right now, as who you are right now, What connects you to God? Is it a practice? Is it a prayer? Is it a favorite story or parable or
All that.
all that? Okay. I should have let you make the list.
Yeah. Oh, wow. What connects me? Prayer, you know. I start my morning with prayer. I read scripture. I read inspirational materials, music, and I love nature. Walking in nature, sitting in nature. Sometimes I take my coloring books to the park and I color in the park and I listen to the birds and, you know. I can tell you what I think is interfaith is a way of life. It's not just for a trip. It's not just for an event. It's the way you live your life. And that's appreciating other people where they are, being willing to speak up when you hear someone disparaging other people of different faiths. Being willing to go outside of your comfort zone into other spaces. So I think interfaith. I think like inclusion. I think how would this sound to this person? And so it's a mindset. So I think that's the activism, being able to raise your hand and defend. I've heard so many negative things about people, in terms of talking about other faiths. And I'll stop them and I'll say, well, let's talk about it this way. Or can you think about it this way? But just being willing to be there, and particularly when you're from a group that's been, kind of vilified. It's nice to know that you got a friend somewhere. I'm with the Unity movement, and for years, because we didn't believe as other people necessarily believed. Like one of our beliefs is all paths lead to God, and there are people who believe that if you're not a Christian or you don't believe in Jesus, you da. And so we were often, criticized. And so I understand that from that point of view, and people would ask questions, but I was always willing to say, this is what we believe and this is why we believe it. And so, just standing out for others, thinking about others in your traditions when you're celebrating something, maybe invite a different group over. Try to get to know each other. I have these wonderful ideas. I have so many, I don't know what to do with them. So yes. So I think it's important to get to know each other, to stand up for each other. I'm not much of I guess when you're doing video or something, I'm not much of a TV watcher. So I spend a lot more time reading and, I don't know, like yesterday, I cooked a really wonderful vegetarian meal. And I really resonated with what I was doing. I don't cook that often. But my husband made his transition some years ago. And so, I'm pretty much, single and I'm in the house by myself. We had no children. And so I'm like thinking, oh, look at this. Look what Earth has given me, and I put it all together. I mean, I think it's about the simple things that we do. Sometimes we think about spirituality and we think about, oh, we got to do all of this. What we have to do is to be grateful in the moment, recognizing that every moment we have is a gift. The food that we eat is a gift. The things that we do. And so we start to cherish. If we could start to cherish the moment and not take it for granted, So I was grateful for the mushrooms and the bell peppers and the hot peppers and onions and the salad. I don't know. I just kind of stay in that moment. Not that I don't have downtime, when I might not be as gleeful, but I'm always grateful. and I always carry joy in my heart.
Well, I was thinking how much I wished I could hear you preach. Now I want to go to dinner after the service with you, so and have you cook. So, okay. Hey, here's a question for you. Last question. Thanks for your time this morning.
Yes.
Do you have a favorite hymn?
Oh, I do.
Can you tell me about that?
Ooh, great is thy faithfulness. Great. Oh, I love that hymn. Yes.
Well,
I've already done my eulogy and all of this. And so that's the song that I want to sing. Great is thy faithfulness.
And it's a great old hymn.
Isn't it? I love hymns, and I hate when they take them out. You know, churches sometimes don't do hymns. I want a hymn Sunday. Just sing hymns, you know. There's a sweet, sweet spirit in this place. And I know it is the presence of the Lord. I love that one too. So.
Angela Harrington Rice is the Executive Director of Interfaith Community Initiatives. Interfaithci.org.
Yes.
Is where to learn more, because we can really learn a lot from you. You and the people of other faiths you're working with, I just feel like you're doing God's work.
Oh,
and it's a blessing to have spoken with you today. My day is going to be better because of it. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.